the Israeli government might collapse. Maybe you're asking, oh, is Ben Gvir again threatening to get out, stop supporting? Well, technically he is out, but he's still supporting the government. Is he threatening again if Israel doesn't go back into Gaza or doesn't get rid of the deal? Not actually. This potential threat is coming from, let's say, different parts of the right, specifically the ultra-Orthodox parts of the government. Basically, something that has been, I think, an issue pretty much since October 7th, but I believe even before. One big problem when it comes to IDF is the manpower, is the numbers they get. For those I think many people are aware, but Israel or IDF has conscription, has draft, but there are exceptions. There are exceptions for some of the ethnic minorities, specifically the Arabs, but there are also exceptions for some of the, let's say, Jewish minorities, specifically the ultra-Orthodox Jews. And now something that has been a problem is basically there was a bill or a potential bill where they wanted to try to draft more or bigger parts of the ultra-Orthodox population, but the two parties within the government, specifically Shas and United Torah Judaism, are threatening to not specifically leave, but to not vote for the government budget, which is has to be done by March, I believe. And if it's not done, a new election is automatically called, or basically, if the budget doesn't pass through, the new election is automatically called for. Meaning, this, in a sense, is different from every single threat to, let's say, the government collapse in the past. Mainly because whenever there was a threat in the past, it always came from the, let's say, the more far right, if you want to call them that, aspects of the government, meaning like Ben Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, meaning something that also was happening here when it came to the last ceasefire, that if Smotrich or Ben Gvir left, the left, I think specifically Yesh Atid, has offered to basically help Netanyahu government to survive if the deal was accepted. With this, there is almost no reason for it to do such an offer. So if this falls through, then Netanyahu's government will absolutely fall through. So we'll discuss why this has become a problem, what maybe can potentially be done about it. I'm not sure if we'll have a specific solution, but also basically, I think more fundamental problems that are behind it. Joining me today is Alejandro. Hey, Alejandro, and I know you're not as a close observer to the internal Israeli politics, but just more, maybe more broadly, what do you make of this whole situation?
Well, I think it's a great story to flag out the core issues that Israel is facing at the moment and that has been facing probably throughout its history. As you mentioned, I'm not a scholar, certainly, regarding Israeli politics, but from the outside, I think that this story fledges out several issues that I think I've seen, and I think I could reveal with a degree of certainty that they are true. Uh, I mean, this issue flags out the problems with the draft, the problems with a bad conception of what Zionism is, the lack of unity that has come up from this terrible defeat that was concretized a couple of weeks ago. You have the ongoing problems and the lack of leadership that the Netanyahu government has brought on, and in essence, you have a really uh, bad moment overall regarding the state of the country.
Yeah, I mean, maybe starting, whenever we talk about the draft, or whenever, we sort of as more broadly capitalists want sort of a more proper system with very little government intervention, no government intervention in economy and as little intervention in, you know, in the actual lives, or I shouldn't say as little, but sort of put it in its proper function, meaning you know, government should only get involved when there is a initiation of force or fraud or any something similar. And whenever we talk about something like draft, I mean, it absolutely, you know, no country should ever have draft. I mean, talking about the government infringing on your rights, in a sense, forcing you or giving you a choice, go to prison or go to the army, and forcing you to potentially risk your life, definitely goes against this principle. But whenever it comes to any sort of exemptions from that, I'm always very split. I'm wondering what you think, because whenever, even when it comes to anything like tax cuts for a specific individual, I'm always a bit unsure about that. Even when it comes to now here, the, let's say, exemptions from certain people, like in a sense, I'm glad less people are forced to or are basically have to go serve the army, especially if they don't want to, if it means to Arabs or ultra-Orthodox Jews. In a sense, I'm happy, but on the other hand, I dislike both the fact that there are sort of like these sort of things going against each other, and that specifically the arguments for exemptions are not some sort of we need more people to be free. It's we need special treatment for our kind of people. So what do you make, Alejandro, what do you make of this sort of push for exemptions? Specifically, now we're talking for the ultra-Orthodox. Again, we're not even talking about the Orthodox parts of Judaism, specifically the ultra-Orthodox parts.
I agree with your issues with the draft. I personally think it's a horrendous institution, especially in the context of Israel, where people are very patriotic and they don't have to be forced to serve in the country. Uh, I actually would object to people in Israel joining the army, especially in the way that they are treated, like cannon fodder, that they are used to protect the enemy. I think that's utterly disgusting and really terrible, and I feel really bad for the soldiers that have been going there. Um, at the same time, the whole special treatment that the certain group of the population of Israel has, I think it's really disgusting. Um, I would say that the real solution would be to take away the whole draft. But as you mentioned, allowing certain people to have more privileges, more access to a certain kind of rights, I think it's totally improper. And it's related to an improper conceptualization of what Zionism should be. In my view, Zionism should be, in essence, uh, creating a state that is willing and able to defend the Jews because they are a persecuted minority, and not the creation of a Jewish state, meaning that they establish or protect a very specific religion. And I think throughout Israeli history, there hasn't been a proper distinction across this. And therefore, you have this kind of people who, in my view, are properly and totally treated in a way that they shouldn't be treated. Like, I don't think that any individual citizen should have a better treatment or a better placement in the compared to the rest of the individuals of a country.
We have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. Uh, Yeah, I mean, when it comes to again this sort of uh, need for conscription, this sort of push for conscription, something to remember. And as you've mentioned, you know, the soldiers who actually have to go fight in the IDF, and many of them do so even voluntarily, especially since there are specific units made up for, I think, both even Orthodox Jews, Arab people who want to who want to join, the Druze who want to join. There are special units already created. So anyone who wants to sort of join the IDF, even from those groups, is welcome to. But when it comes to sort of this need for manpower, something to remember is this need for more manpower isn't from some sort of, Israel. Or sort of the situation we see, for example, in Ukraine, that like they have so little resources, they have so they in a sense are fighting so desperately that they need everything they can get their hands on and to fight to the fullest extent possible. This is not the case for Israel. Israel could easily, I mean, as you pretty much said it, sacrifice less lives of their own soldiers, because what we see is Israel and the IDF not fighting, or in a sense, to a large extent, not fighting with their soldiers as the first thing in mind, or citizens at home with the first in their mind, but Palestinians, and specifically protecting enemy civilians before protecting their own people. So, this problem, in a sense, Israel has is self-inflicted, but not from the idea that they are not drafting enough of their people. They are not waging the war in a proper way, and I think that's why, in a sense, this issue is much more fundamental, and it's not even really about, do you draft ultra-Orthodox Jews or do you not draft ultra-Orthodox Jews. Israel could get away with not drafting anyone. I think in a free society, in a society where people want to live in, where people want to have it succeed, more than enough people will sign up to fight for it. I mean, when America abolished its draft, it's not like suddenly they didn't have any people. Many people are still joining um, the army to fight, even despite the fact that even America is not really fighting to the extent it really should. But Alejandro, do you think if maybe not like tomorrow, but if Israel got rid of the draft, that Israel would suddenly disappear, that you'd have pretty much no one willing to fight for it?
Well, I cannot say that. I would, in the way that I think Israeli people conceive and love their country, I would say no. They would be willingly uh, going to war. Uh, the way in which I think Israel won't be here with us any longer is that it keeps one, avoiding any real confrontation against the people who want to wipe it out, which is a topic that we have been discussing in this channel for almost a year and a half. But second of all, one of the common features that you see in countries that are struggling or are in the process of disappearance is that people within your own or in the highest levels of power have no means or willingness to provoke any kind of unity in order to preserve the nation. There was some unity in October 7th. However, what you are seeing today is that there's no longer this kind of unity. And the perfect example of politicians lacking any kind of consensus or any kind of um, of intellectual unity across potential issues bring up abroad is Rome, with the Western Roman Empire about to fall, in the one of the last emperors, Majorianus. Um, he he was very good. He was about to face most of the barbarian enemies that came up with him, but instead he was betrayed by his second in command, a barbarian called Ricimer, and after that, the Roman Empire fell. What is important here is that if people no longer care about the idea about the notion of your country, yeah, that's what's not going to allow it to survive. And what I fear is that the idea of protection of Israel, of having a nation that is thriving and willing to protect its own citizens, is slowly fading away. It won't happen tomorrow. It won't happen next year. But I think that uh, the capitulation of the last weeks will certainly aid to that. The draft is just a minimal issue.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to this idea of unity, but first I want to read a comment from the chat. Someone says, this opposition to collectivism of conscription by objectivists is not taking into account the emergency of the existential threat. If Miss Rand was alive, I don't think she'd criticize it. Well, Ayn Rand was alive and she did criticize it. So I don't know what you mean by specific at that. But yeah, I'll go to you, Alejandro, but I'll just mention. I mean, again, any country that is worth fighting for, is that is worth sort of preserving, will have people voluntarily wanting to preserve it. So this idea that the only way to sort of um, make people care for their liberty, make people care for their freedom, make people care for their country is by forcing them, I think goes against the fundamental idea of the fact that, of pretty much the Enlightenment, the fact that we did want something better. We wanted, as a sort of humanity or as a sort of Western idea. We wanted to have more liberty over our lives. And that also meant we were willing to fight for it. I mean, what was American Revolution, for example? They could have accepted sort of living under the crown, under, let's say, relatively in the world, pretty good conditions, but not as good conditions as, sort of human life needs or we can get, and they were willing to fight for it, and they won it, and we got it, and they joined voluntarily. But Alejandro, what do you make of this?
Well, definitely, and I think this would have to be taken out of context. If you have an army of people who aren't willing to fight for you, what does it? Why would you think that they would go into battle and be fierce or face the challenges of war? If people are so afraid that to enlist themselves, they will be afraid to fight for you in the battle, and that's not a winning army. I mean, you mentioned the war in Ukraine. Uh, think about the North Korean fighters and what they're used for. What they're used for is for them just to stamp out on the ground so that Ukrainians can shot them and they rebuild their position. Like that's the only use that you can have for the drafted North Koreans, which is I think despicable. Uh, I think you cannot have a willingly and good fighting army if people aren't willing to fight.
Yeah, and sort of going back to this idea of unity. Well, when October 7 happened, we had the war cabinet, we had the sort of united government, which had, I'm trying to remember how many votes in total it had. Uh, I think around 80 to 90 with in Israeli politics. That's like insane. You'd never need that. Even when parliamentary politics, you usually you have like 50% and then like few more votes when it comes to coalition government. So having like in this case 3/4 sort of being united is like insane when it comes to parliamentary republics. And it slowly fell apart. But if you take how many months it was sort of willing to sort of stand for, you had enough time to completely eliminate the threat of the Palestinians. You had enough time to completely get rid of. You had this unity, and once when it came to this like mild approach to the war, this like slow, and we don't really know what we're doing. We have no idea what we'll do after the war. Then yeah, it fell apart because there was no unity anymore. There was nothing to be united about. But if that uh, if that time was used to actually eliminate the threats, that would have worked. But it didn't. Uh, Someone in the someone in the chat says, "Sorry, both these guys are clueless about Israel." Well, I don't know what specifically you mean, but I'll bring up something you pointed out earlier because I think this is something that's important to remember. And it's when you brought up the case of Zionism and what Zionism really stands for. Something to remember is, I mean, at least we specifically, I don't know about many of the pro-Israelis, but we defend Israel because it is the free nation in the Middle East. It's because it is the one nation in the Middle East that's more free than any other, and that has sort of basis for freedom, that has some movement towards freedom, and has some respect, some civilization, some westernization, some respect for what it means uh, uh, to have like a proper society. If these ultra-orthodox parts of Israel won, if these more collectivistic parts of Israel won, there would be no real reason to defend Israel. It would be just like any nation in the Middle East. In a sense, if Israel was to become like an actual Jewish state, by that I mean it's like a state religion, or let's say uh, it it would be like an ethno state or whatever you want to make of it, there would be no reason to defend Israel because it would be like any other nation in the Middle East. So that's why it's important when it comes to sort of defending Israel, when it comes to advocating for Israel, it has to be done on the grounds that it is the free nation. It is, in a sense, it is Zionist in that that's the one place where Jews can live freely. But Jews can live freely thanks to liberty, thanks to capitalism, thanks to freedom, not thanks to the fact that Jews won't be specifically prosecuted there. In some sense, America is a Zionist country because Jews, to a large extent, are allowed to live freely there, and even America is not uh, perfect because of the amount of anti-Semitism that there is around the world. But when it comes to defending Israel, it has to be done on the grounds that it is free for Jews as any other people to live freely there. Um, but Alejandro, what do you make of that?
Well, I agree with you, Daniel. I don't think I have anything else to add. Maybe to rescue your point on unity and to add some point, I would say that unity is built upon the successes of that society because it reinforces the idea that your society has good ideas and good ideas that are worth fighting for. And nobody can say that the fighting after October 7th has been successful. There were some successes. The most um, important, in my view, was the pager attack, which I think everyone here celebrated because it was probably one of the most important intelligence operations that happened probably in history. One of the greatest attacks that we have seen. Um, but after all that, we have seen that Israel has retracted when it hasn't won. And I don't think that in the future we will see people cheering on or saying that good things happened from this engagement. Um, I hope to be wrong, and I hope that this changes. But I don't think that the threat has been defeated, and I will think that it will resurface. And when that happens, um, the the achievements or the will be further challenged. The achievements of Israel will be further challenged in the future.
Bonnie asked, was the pager attack in the works before October 7th? I haven't checked recently how much more we know, but I believe it is possible since the sort of infrastructure that had to be set up before went through several different countries, went through several different ways. So I think there is case for it. I have also heard that the fact that the pager attack happened was because not specifically that that was the best time for Israel to do it, but that Hezbollah was maybe starting to suspect that something like that might have happened. So Israel had that set up for possibly, not to mention the fact that so many of Hezbollah operatives had the pagers. That doesn't happen from one day to the other. That it's all distributed. So it had they probably Israel had this so-called button or whatever you call it, probably for some time, and were waiting for the best opportunity, and that's when they did it. Um, Someone also says, "Come on, guys, are you saying that through conscription morale is low in the IDF? Many Jews in the US and the UK booked flights on October 8th." Uh,
So what?
so yeah, I mean, you are making the case for it, right? Like, yeah, do you think those people booked the flights because there was conscription? Like, I'm only gonna fight for Israel because it's forcing me to fight. Again, so many, and I know personally, some friends who did contact their counterparts in the IDF or sort of their former units to see if they should go back. I mean, yeah, because Israel is this free country, because Israel is I, I mean, how many Palestinians did like go back to Gaza to like fight for Hamas after October 7th? And they are all around the world. Again, and I mean, you might have some fanatics. I mean, you'd have some people on both sides who will just do whatever. But again, arguing that the only way to preserve freedom is by coercion, I think goes against the whole idea of freedom. I think sort of by our view of man, our view of liberty is that not only that man requires freedom, but that also man wants to be free or wants to, if he has a proper philosophy, wants to defend what liberty needs. So I think we already have Western nations without conscription. So I think there is no. And again, when it comes to any sort of policy, it doesn't happen from one day to the other. It's not like when I say Israel shouldn't have draft, that like from one day to the other you like get rid of it. You need to change the fundamental culture for something like that to even happen. But there should be push against it. And again, not in a context of like we just don't want draft, but no, we want to be free in all aspects, and this is one of them we should get on the sort of road to liberty. But
Yeah.
yeah.
And there will be cowards. I don't deny it. But there are also plenty of brave people. And if you want a novelized version of that, read the Four Feathers. Really good book.
All right, any last thoughts before we part our ways?
Just I'm going to track this story closely. Hopefully, something better will come up, and let's see.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. There'll be no episode of the reality show today, but we will be back tomorrow with another episode of both the Daily Objective and the reality show. Thank you, Alejandro, for joining me today. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and bye bye.